OMAS 41 in Union, and he's out of Union Square in New York City. Brian's registered in the state of New York, and he's a member of the AIA, and together they're known as O'Brien Mulison. So, Brian, where are you? There you are. Take it away. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about not necessarily visual perspectives, but a shift in my perspective on three things. One being home and place, two being the practice of architecture, and three being the making of architecture. These are the 21 homes I've had since I was born in Big Sky, Montana in 1976 in the U.S. My sense of home as a place has always been incredibly transient. Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, New Jersey, New York, New Jersey, New York. Finally, my wife and I moved with our two boys to Toronto in June just of last year in 2010. This is the map of the U.S. that I remember from growing up. I was raised mostly in Nebraska and Kansas, in the center of the U.S. My knowledge of the country faded dramatically as it neared all four of our coasts. I'm pretty sure at least some of us really thought Alaska was an island next to Hawaii, and I'm fairly certain that this map is still used, which is increasingly unfortunate. In 1995, against most advice from most people I knew, I moved to Newark, New Jersey for university. This is the view from my architecture studio across Rutgers University, downtown Newark, Hudson River, and to the World Trade Center in New York. This was the first really dramatic shift in my perspective on place and how I referenced the world physically and culturally. In '99, I started dating a girl from Carleton University in Ottawa. She had moved down to New York with a number of her friends who taught me a lot about Canadians and even more about Americans. I know that these look incredibly superficial to most of you. To me, they represent the seemingly infinite subtle differences that I become aware of daily. Carl Muleisen and I began moonlighting with our work in 2001. We weren't yet licensed, so we couldn't call ourselves O'Brien Muleisen Architecture Studio. We just used the acronym OMAS. The potential of different meanings quickly became sort of interesting to us. It's kind of addictive to us. OMAS might accept some if you send them to acronyms@omasworks.com. In 2005, I became a licensed architect in New York State. New York is one of only 3 of the 50 states that doesn't have reciprocity with Ontario. In 2009, when my wife and I made the decision to move to Toronto, I didn't know that. I'm working on it. I look forward to being able to call myself an architect in Ontario without the threat of a lawsuit. Fortunately, I can still build a single-family home. This is a quick glimpse at some of our work from moonlighting years, the exploration of architectural typologies like the dog trot, modification of a family cabin in Pennsylvania, a house to watch storms in the prairies, and propaganda postcards here that we sent out to solicit work, which we still do from time to time. We opened in 2006 with O'Brien Muleisen Architecture Studio with that final project, Work 32. Like most other small practices, I know we didn't have much of a business plan when we started, other than the idea that we wanted to make beautiful architecture and not go under, still sort of a plan. We've now expanded that very detailed plan to include near monthly trips back and forth, maintaining our friendship and our practice across the border. This is the border airplanes. With Carl at OMAS 41 in New York and me at OMAS 44 in Toronto, we continue to manage our work with near constant video conferencing on job sites and in the offices. Our perspective on how to practice the business of architecture has shifted dramatically. We do work too, but we do this sometimes too. When I graduated from university, I took a position with an architecture office to run a residential project. This is a diagram of the works of ours, of OMAS, which are rooted in those initial relationships. A number of referrals, the same clients in repeat as they want to do more work. We have a number of diagrams like this that, for us, speak to the personal relationships that support our studio. During the earlier days of OMAS, much of our attention was focused strictly on the making of the project. We've now had 54 clients, and the more we've had, the more we've realized how important all the people in the process are, from clients, through consultants, contractors, trades, everybody. The making of architecture really is all about the who. In 2005, we received a call from a friend of an old colleague of mine. He owned a barn which he renovated some years before on his own, and he was now interested in rehabilitating and joining an unused carriage house that was adjacent to that barn. Our interest was in breathing a sort of mystery of new life into the old frame, while we inserted a very clear sort of object within that frame. As we worked on his buildings over the next year or so, he discovered an old stone well on the property that he didn't know he had. He called us back to figure out what to make of it. We proposed counteracting the traditionally vertical act of drawing water from the well with the horizontal movement of light. So the slot that you see in the stone box corresponds to the angle of the sun an hour before the sunset of the solstice. This is our entry into the open competition for the Museum of Polish History in Warsaw. Our plan centered around the creation of spaces that would be as deliberate to us with a single individual in them as they would with hundreds. So for us, whether it's a competition or a private residence, we're always interested in what we consider moments of the sublime. I was in and around New York City for 15 years. The majority of architects in New York work within other buildings, and we have been no exception to that. Columns of trees, unmovable walls, or rock faces, the place is the site. Whether it's called a renovation, an adapt, or reuse, or remodeling, we prefer to think of our work strictly as architecture, no matter where we do it. The challenge of these sites is finding the potential intricacies of space within a defined shell. This is a project we've been working on for just a couple of months now. We're joining the top 2 penthouse floors of the building in New York's Upper East Side. The direction of the project for us is to create an architectural and spatial language that penetrates the floor and joins the 2 layers of the building with slots of space, continual vertical surfaces, to create a sort of distinct awareness of being above or below. This is a project we have showing here at the 20 and Change Exhibit. The discovery of the original brick wall, which had divided the horses from the carriages in this 1903 carriage house, informed the language of our work. This slide shows the previous condition, the wall as we discovered it, they didn't know it was there, a sketch made with the owner on site, and finally sort of our intervention. These are the details, some details from the same project. Our interest in any given work is not just in the form and space, but in every condition and corner, which we obsess over with. We're interested in the detail of the door, stair, window, roof line, kitchen cabinets, or in this case, each spring-loaded viewfinder. Explain that later. The material palette also stems from sort of a respect for the building, which we developed. This last project I'll show is our first project here in Toronto, where the owner will store and repair vintage Vespa scooters. The building silhouette is essentially a mirror image of the extension off of the back of his existing house. It's day-lit through a perimeter clear story, and as it nears completion here, we'll have a large drop-down door that acts as a work platform. Perspective defines how you see the world and how you see your place in it. Never let your ambition to be a great architect hinder your ambition to make great architecture. I heard this from a professor of mine in '96. Making architecture may be about the who, but architecture itself is about the place that you make, and it's about your interaction with that place. I'm looking forward to making home and place in Toronto.
Thank you very much, Brian. I think that it's interesting that you came from Andrew at the beginning came from Halifax. We have people coming, as yourself, from Nebraska. And wherever you work, you always carry with you the place you were born, certain aspects of which influence the formative developments of your design aspirations. And I think it's great just to bring in all these influences. I remember being in Nebraska and staying at these hotels where they would warn you not to be careful opening the doors due to high winds or something. So Nebraska, the Great Plains. Anyway, thank you all very much. This was a great event. I think we deserve a round of applause for all of the brave ones.